Welcome back, and thanks for joining me for another garden episode. If you're new, thanks for watching. I welcome you. The end of February, beginning of March is when I do a lot of my seed starting, most of my seed starts. So this video is about me doing my lettuce seeds this week and my sweet peppers. I do my sweet peppers early because I like to give my peppers a longer time. So somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks before they're actually going to go outside, I begin the sweet peppers, and then hot peppers I started earlier, which are about 12 weeks. So I am planting 2 cells a piece for all of the peppers. I have a lot of different varieties of peppers from sweet to hot, and I don't want too many plants. I do put 2 seeds per cell. I do not thin out the seeds, I leave them there. This year I wanted to try some new varieties, and I picked up this ají cachuza or ají dulce and the sweet bonnet. And upon looking at them, they look very similar. I think the only difference is that the sweet bonnet is supposed to have the smoky flavor from the Scotch bonnet, but those two are similar, so don't make the mistake that I did and get the same type of plant. When I went to plant the lettuce, I did the same thing. I put a couple of seeds in 2 planting holes because I wasn't sure how lettuce came up. This is my first year doing lettuce in seed trays. I direct sowed them last year but didn't get the timing right. For these, just as a trial, I also pre-soaked the soil, so I did not water them afterwards as the soil was already damped. I had them bottom watered. So this is a completed tray now for all of my lettuces, and I definitely did a couple of different varieties from all really loose leaf, no lettuce heads like romaine. The overwinter peppers have been brought upstairs, and now it's time to switch out the soil that they've been in since the winter. In looking at this plant, it is all brown, just that little bit is green, and that's a habanero. So I don't believe this habanero made it, so I'm only going to just dump this into the trash. I'm not going to save it at all. The only reason I'm cutting it down is because I was trying to make it easier to throw away, but I think these shears are dull. I need to sharpen them or get new ones. But the stalk was completely hollow, no green. So this one sadly was a fail. The next one is a Hungarian, and this one is completely dead. Both are brown, it's crispy, whereas the tips on this one is just brown. So I'm going to save the one side, but I am going to cut off the tops of the brown side, and hopefully it will grow underneath that. I cut a little bit further than where the brown ends just to try to get to some healthy tissue, and this one, single one, will be planted by itself. Again, I haven't overwintered before, so this is as much as an experiment. This Tabasco looks really good. The reason I'm cutting what looks to be green and healthy stems off is that I felt it was too crowded for coming back. So I'm just trimming down pieces of it, things that look like they would grow into each other instead of having some good circulation around it. It's not that these were bad per se, they just were not ones that I wanted to give it some room. After that, I just dumped the soil, the whole bucket, into the garbage. This is the habanero, which was dead, so I didn't save anything out of that one. But with the others that were healthy, I tried to carefully pull them out, as careful as possible. Sometimes the soil just popped out as it did on that one. I tried to just pull them out as much as possible, and if I could separate it, I separated what was dead from what was alive in the soil. but that's to show you how different these two look. The habanero is just no life showing there, whereas these have a lot of green. And then I repeated the same process with the Hungarian that I trimmed out. In this one, I had to separate the dead one off. I didn't want to plant that one at all. And they were quite entangled. So I tried not to damage the root. I know it looks like I was pretty rough, but I tried really hard not to damage the root. And this soil is a mixture of cocoa coir, peat moss, fertilizer, and some garden lime. I did wet the soil afterwards, but it is different from my seed starting mix in that my seed starting mix doesn't have any fertilizer or garden lime in it. It just has the vermiculite. Oh, and if I missed that, vermiculite's in there too. So all of the buckets were treated the same. They were given all the same mixture and a little bit of fertilizer. I didn't give it any liquid fertilizer, just water. But this is how the plants look in their bucket after everything has been completed. Starting in the back of the indoor garden, there's been some changes. The overwintered peppers have been brought upstairs, and I changed out the soil. So they're now in 5-gallon buckets. I put them in the 5-gallon buckets to prepare them for going outside. Just in case they don't survive, I want them to be in their own container instead of putting them in the ground. So they're prepped. So I had 8 in total that ended up surviving. So there's 2 of them. And then here are the other 6 that I have. I completely lost 1 plant only. I am concerned about this one right here, the Tabasco, because it does have some browning over here, so maybe that tip won't survive. But all the other ones still look pretty green, so it's just a matter of keeping them in here, getting them warmed up. Now the potting soil that I put in these buckets does have fertilizer in it, because it is the up potting mix that I use. So when I use my seedling start mix, it doesn't have any fertilizer, it just has the worm castings, and this mix has worm castings and fertilizer added. Back there is the pup that I took off of my mother's corn plant. I am just keeping an eye on this. The soil is still pretty wet, so I'm not going to water it until it dries out to try to avoid the rot, but that's just going to sit for about 2 months to see what happens. I wasn't too successful with the pineapple top, so I'm not too hopeful for this, but just see what happens. And I'm pretty sure my aloe plant is not going to give me a flower this year, even though it's looking good, it's looking healthy, it's coming back. And then over here, I put the turmeric. So in researching, the turmeric does prefer some shade, so I'm giving it indirect light instead of direct light because the edges were getting crispy. So I hope it likes sitting over here better, but I don't think that my indoor greenhouse gets warm enough to really sustain it. So that'll be going outside in the summer. Over here, I have the pineapple pineapple transplants I started, and these guys are doing phenomenally. They have multiple levels of leaves now, and I even have 2 that have pups. One has a single and one has 2, but these are doing really, really well. Over here, it took about 12 days, but I have sprouts from the purple sweet potato, and it's actually got new ones. Since I was in here yesterday, a new set came up, so I'm getting a lot of sprouts off of this one, but all the other ones I don't see anything just yet. Here are the pepper plants I started last week. You can see I've got some of the red Scotch bonnet that are sprouting. I've got one that came up and one that is coming up right next to it. And in the seed tray next to that, there's another one. The smaller plants you see, I just reused this soil. So there are other seedlings there, but that's not anything that I purposefully planted. But the the sweet peppers that I planted, I don't see anything there. That concludes today's video. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this content, stick around and watch another video earlier in the series when I started these.